The month of March really kicks off gardening season here in Ohio. And while I am doing some planting, I'm spending a bigger chunk of my time doing general cleanup and maintenance so that when the weather decides to finally cooperate, I can jump right into planting with no delays. So today I'm going to share with you what I am doing in my Zone 6A Ohio garden during the month of March. The first task that I tackle is garden cleanup. Now, I try to get most of this done in the fall, but I do still have some remnants out here left over from my very late fall or overwintered crops. I'm removing hoops from my late fall broccoli planting, plant supports and plant tags, and pulling up old rotten Brussels sprout stalks. These get tossed over the fence and onto my compost pile. I also get rid of asparagus fronds while I'm cleaning up. Now, you may have seen the warnings not to clean up your garden plant debris till you start to get regularly into temperatures in the 50s. And this is to protect pollinators that may be overwintering in that garden debris. While this is true, asparagus beetles also like to overwinter in garden debris, especially asparagus fronds. So if you have issues with asparagus beetles like I do here, getting rid of those fronds before things start to warm up and become active is key. Anytime after those asparagus fronds start to turn brown and die back naturally, so late winter through very early spring is a good time, cut them off at the soil line and destroy them. I mean destroy them, like light them on fire, destroy them. Burn, asparagus beetles, burn. The next task is to give my beds a bit of a facelift. Now, garden rows and beds naturally sink over time. So as soon as the ground thaws and is dried out enough to be worked, I scrape all of that dirt and rotted hay up from my aisleways or walkways back up onto the tops of my beds and rows. One key element towards success in gardening in my clay soil here is to elevate my planting areas. So I like to come in and give my rows a little lift every other year or so. After I've scraped all that goodness up from the walkways, I line my paths with cardboard. This step has been a massive lifesaver for me, as cardboard really helps to suppress any weeds that might pop up in my aisleways. Now, I've had quite a few questions about the safety of using cardboard boxes in the garden, and I try to use only plain, unwaxed cardboard with minimal printing, and I remove all of the plastic tape and try to get off all of those white shipping labels if possible. According to the ATRA Sustainable Agricultural Program, which is managed by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, a few years ago, ATRA did research on the different substances that go into making cardboard, as well as the glues, inks, and coatings that may be used. Based on the information available then, the basic components of corrugated cardboard seem to be relatively benign. Brown corrugated cardboard appears to be the least processed paper product. It therefore would have the lowest number and smallest quantity of chemical substances compared to white, glossy, highly printed, waxed, or otherwise coated cardboard, paperboard, and papers. There is an abundant supply of relatively plain, minimally printed, brown corrugated cardboard that can be obtained for free in most areas of the United States. Using this, many people can fulfill their mulching needs without the use of riskier materials. And for what it's worth, my opinion on the matter is that it is a much less terrible option than spraying the heck out of your garden with weed killer, or having someone give up on gardening because they just can't manage the weeds. I also generally only use cardboard in my walkways or when I'm trying to kill off grass to form a new bed, which I'll show you in a minute. After the cardboard, I put down a layer of hay mulch. Yes, hay, not straw. Despite the seemingly millions of voices on the internet telling you that the universe will implode if you dare to use hay in your garden, it has been an incredible boon for me. I've gotten a lot of really great benefits from the hay and really no detrimental effects to speak of. I use alfalfa hay because it rots down more quickly than straw, and it also adds a lot of really nice nutrient-rich organic matter to the soil. It also does a great job suppressing weeds, especially in combination with the cardboard layer. If you are purchasing hay, be sure to ask your farmer if they spray the alfalfa with anything. Now, typically around here, farmers don't use herbicides on their alfalfa, but it's worth checking into. Also, if certified noxious weed-free hay is available in your area, that is a great option as well. If not, I like to opt for second or third cutting alfalfa, as that tends to have little to no weed seed in it. Another option, if you're really concerned about weed seeds in your hay, is just to leave it sit out in the elements for a year. Usually over the course of being weathered and rained on, little mice and critters getting in there and picking out the seeds, that hay is pretty clean after it sits for that long. And finally, depending on what I am planting in that row, and if the weather is cooperating, I will plant a cover crop. I sowed a spring green manure cover crop into this area, and it is a cool weather blend of oats, vetch, and peas. And about the time that I'm ready to go in with my tomato transplants, I'll mow this all down and just leave it on top of the soil as a mulch. Or if I know I'm going to want to go in here really soon and plant my vegetable crops, I might cover this area with plastic to warm up that soil even more quickly. Now you can use clear or black plastic. Keep in mind that clear plastic will actually warm the soil a little more quickly, but it also will allow more weed seeds to germinate. So if you have a big problem with weeds, black plastic or black tarps might be a better option. And up in the front of my gardens, I will reapply a layer of wood chip mulch to my walkways and top off any of my raised beds that have sunk through the winter. It is incredible how much the soil level in these beds can sink over time. This bed, for example, was filled to a couple inches of the top last spring, and this is what it looks like now. So to fill my beds back up, I will use things like topsoil. I've been known to go down in the woods and dig up buckets of that really nice dirt and bring it up here. I use compost, and I even dump the potting medium from my old containers into these beds. The next big task is infrastructure maintenance. So last year I had a big problem with rabbits, and I thought it would be a great idea to use some green plastic poultry netting, put it around the base of my big fence to keep the rabbits out. It was economical, it was easy to put up. I figured it was a great solution. It was not. Unbeknownst to me at the time, rabbits will chew right through plastic poultry netting to get to the delicious veggies inside the garden. So this year I wanted to get out and fix this problem before the rabbits even got out here. So I took all the green poultry netting fencing off and put up real wire poultry netting along the base of my fence, hoping to head off any hungry bunnies making their homes inside the garden this year. I'm also working on taking down my cattle panel tomato and cucumber trellises, as I'll be moving those to a different location this year, and I'll be working on putting up more cattle panel arches. Now is a great time to build any new raised beds or start on a hugelkultur bed for the coming year. And it is the perfect time to evaluate your watering strategy. If you have been considering putting up a rainwater collection system for the garden, March is a great time to do it because it allows you to take advantage of all the spring rains that we typically get. If you need more space, now is a great time to start that process as well. If you are expanding your beds into what is currently lawn, solarizing or smothering with some type of mulch are great options. Now in the early spring, I generally opt for the smothering with mulch tactic. And that is because solarization works great, but it's a better option for when the sun is the most intense. So think July or August. To smother out my lawn and create a new bed, I put down a layer of cardboard and then cover that with leaf mulch. This will very effectively kill off the grass underneath and start the process of new bed formation. Now, after this step, I have a couple of options. I can go in and do a no-dig potato bed like I did last year. I can come in later in the season and broad fork or lightly till this and plant a cover crop. Or for you lucky folks with better draining soil than I have, you could go right on top of this and start building a lasagna style layered bed. Early spring is the perfect time to give some serious thought to your pest and disease control strategy for the year. So I mentioned the fence, that's just the beginning for me. Basically, you want to look back at your prior gardening season and really think about the pests and diseases that were the biggest issues for you. For me last year, it was things like cucumber beetles, squash vine borers, of course the rabbits, and the voles. So I tried to spend some time this winter researching the best options for controlling some of these critters. Right now, I'm going to want to get all of my supplies on hand. So if you need things like netting or organic sprays or fencing, you have those supplies ready to go before the critters even set their beady little eyes on your garden prize. If you know you have a problem with deer, put up a deer fence now. In gardening, the old adage is so true. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound or more of cure. And one little last bit of spring cleaning. Before I start bringing all my transplants out to the greenhouse to start the hardening off process, I try to clean up the greenhouse. I move all the shelving out, wash it down, pull weeds if there are any, lay down another layer of gravel on the floor if necessary, and if it's really looking grungy, I will wash off the ceiling and the walls with a solution of a few drops of dish soap in a gallon of water. And because I am trying to hold myself accountable, I will admit that this is still the state of my barn, and this desperately needs cleaned and organized before the gardening craziness really sets in next month. For those of you who watched my things to do in the garden during November and December video, you may recall that my barn was then 3 months ago in an utter state of chaos, which might be acceptable at the end of the gardening season. It is not acceptable now. I tried, I promise. I moved a few things around, but it was really cold in here and I just didn't want to do it. But it will get cleaned at some point. But I'd love to hear from you. What gardening chores are you tackling during the month of March? And did you get your gardening shed or barn or porch or wherever you keep your supplies organized over the winter? It's okay, you can make me feel guilty. It will light a fire under my behind and make me get this mess cleaned up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.